Hi everyone, I hope that you've had a great week. I've really enjoyed our conversation over the past few days about the role of museum educators and their ever-expanding responsibilities. It's been wonderful to see your ideas about what is even the best title for a museum educator. Maybe it's really matchmaker, or liaison, or interpreter, or facilitator, or maybe it's some combination of all of those things. I think you all have been doing a wonderful job of citing evidence from the text to support your ideas, sharing your own personal examples, and so hopefully our conversation this past week really kind of whetted your appetite as to the many things that museum educators do. If you haven't yet posted your thoughts, please go ahead and do so. I think there's plenty of room to respond. Many thanks to Melissa, who is our weekly discussion leader, who posed some additional questions for us. I've posed a couple of additional questions in there too, just about whether or not those very broad responsibilities that museum educators have, whether that's actually a benefit, or maybe it's a challenge. Maybe we're asking museum educators to be too much and to be all things to all people. So feel free to chime in there with your own thoughts on that regard. So in this coming week, Unit 3, we're going to also be turning more externally, as we discussed a little bit this week, rather than internally, and we're going to be looking at the different kinds of visitors or audiences that come to museums. So our readings are going to tackle that kind of in broad strokes to whet our appetite to this topic. As the semester unfolds, we're going to be diving in a little bit more closely to look at different audience types. But we'll be having some readings by the noted researcher John Falk, who talks about the identity of the museum visitor. How do people self-define when they come to a museum? Maybe they have many different identities that they're sorting through. And then some other readings too, including a report from AAM, the Center for the Future of Museums, that talks about the changing demographics, at least in the United States, and how we should be thinking about that as we get closer to the year 2034 and what that landscape of museum visitation might look like and how we should respond to that. So we have two weekly discussion leaders this week. Thank you to Sarah Beth and Ryan for volunteering to be our weekly discussion leaders. And they're going to be working on two discussion questions this week. They'll be posting those no later than this Wednesday, September 25th. So be on the lookout for that. Those two questions in the Unit 3 discussion of readings discussion area. And then once Sarah Beth and Ryan have posed those questions, then we can all jump in with our thoughts and observations. I also ask all of you to visit the Unit 3 lessons area of our class, which invites you to read a little bit of text about museum visitors, but then also to watch or screen a recording of an AAM annual meeting session that was from 2010 called The Next Generation of Museums, Millennials. So there's a link to that session recording in the lessons area for Unit 3. If you don't see it there, if it doesn't work, you can always go to the Museum Cafe area and go to the AAM recordings on the left navigation, go to 2010, and then just scroll down to look for that session recording, The Next Generation of Museums. So after you've listened to that recording, I would like you to post your reflections about it in a discussion area, and so I will be creating that discussion area, and I ask you to chime in with your thoughts about it there. Last but not least, you'll note in the assignments area of our class that we do have an assignment coming up that's due on October 20th, which asks you to observe a museum education program of your choice. It can be a public gallery talk, a docent-led tour, it can be a special event at a museum. So take a look around. It's always best to get started on these types of assignments sooner rather than later, because we're going to be digging in, we're going to be commenting on them, and so I really encourage you to get started on it because it does take some time, obviously, to observe the program and then to gather your thoughts about it. The only thing that I would suggest is that if you are planning to observe something like a school tour, or even a family program, something that involves small children, I encourage you to reach out to that museum education department in advance to request permission that you observe. That's not really so necessary for a program that's open to the public, but if it is going to be involving small children, I think it's a good idea for you to introduce yourself. Um, so I look forward to digging in this week with Unit 3 as we explore the different kinds of museum audiences or visitors. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the course questions area or email me directly. I will be traveling some for work, starting on Thursday, September 26th, and coming back the following Thursday, October 3rd. Of course, I'll be checking email and I'll be online quite a bit, but if I'm a little bit slower to respond, then that is probably why. So see you online, and let's get started with Unit 3.